Namaskar. Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Shri Iyer. Today I have a new guest, Dr. Meenakshi Jain, author. You have seen her brother Sunil Jain as well as her sister Sandhya Jain, who writes on pgurus.com. And this is the first time Meenakshi ji is gracing our channel. Meenakshi ji, namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Pleasure is all ours, Meenakshi ji. My topic today, viewers, is about the Sri Krishna Janmasthan, and Meenakshi ji has just written a new book on this topic. The book's name is Vasudev Krishna and Mathura, and this book is available on Amazon. And I would encourage each and every one of you to buy this book to read and understand the significance of this temple. Remember that in 2017, Dr. Jain had come up with a book about the Ayodhya Ram Mandir that is considered one of the most best references to understand why Rama was born there. So, Dr. Meenakshi Jain, this book, Vasudeva Krishna and Mathura, now what you use the name is slightly different from Sri Krishna Janmasthan. You use the name Katra Keshav Deva. Now, you have done a fair amount of research to find out when exactly was this built, because there are people who keep saying various dates, and I'm hoping that you're going to go back to the original source and give us the right date. So take it away, madam. Thank you very much for joining again, and I'm sorry to take such a long introduction for you.
Thank you so much again. You know, when I began this work on Mathura, the first thing that struck me was the strength of the Hindu civilizational memory. That civilizational memory is evident at every sacred site of the Hindus that I have studied, whether it is Ayodhya, whether it is Somnath, whether it is Kashi, and coming to Mathura, which is the topic of discussion today. When I began this book, I had no idea. I knew that the Hindus always regarded it as a special place, that it is a birthplace of their revered deity. But like so many others, I was not aware of what you call historical evidence to substantiate the Hindu civilizational memory. And this is the most important takeaway on this subject, which I have written in my book. Now, you will be, when we talk about Mathura, we think that the dispute is just a few decades or a few centuries old. But your viewers will be surprised to note that the first evidence that we get of a sacred structure at a site called Katra Keshav Dev. Katra Keshav Dev is supposed to be a very important site in the Hindu civilizational memory. Now, Katra Keshav Dev, I'm just using that word because I don't want to, bring modern terminology into the debate. Right now, we call it as Krishna Janmasthan. But in the epigraphic evidence that we get, which is 2000 years old, the site is referred to as Katra Keshav Dev. Now, I want to tell you about the first epigraph, the first inscription that we found at Mathura. And before I continue, I want to tell your viewers that all this epigraphic evidence was found 50 to 100 years ago by colonial archaeologists. So please don't think that this is a creation or invention or discovery of so-called Hindutva historians. It is not. And these inscriptions you can verify for yourself in the Journal of the Archaeological Survey of India called Epigraphia Indica. All the volumes are on the net. Now, coming to Mathura. Now, there is an inscription that we have found which is dated before 15 Common Era. Now, why do I say it is dated before 15 Common Era? because it says that in the reign of this ruler, I'm writing this inscription. And that ruler, his reign ended in 15 Common Era.
So
So
that is
by
about 2007 years ago.
absolutely correct. Now, this inscription is only partially with us. It's a fragment, because we must remember that Mathura had a history of being attacked and devastated again and again. So whatever survives is our luck, and nothing survives in complete form. So now this inscription, it is part of a door. So it is called Vasu Door Jam inscription. This door jam is 8.5 feet tall. So you can imagine, it was not a small structure by any chance, because the full door jam has not survived. Only a fragment has survived, which is 8.5 feet tall. Now this inscription, and it's there in Mathura Museum. Your viewers or anyone going to Mathura Museum must see this inscription. In the front, there is carving, and the inscription is at the back. Now, this inscription is very interesting. It is by a person, an individual named Vasu. And he says that he is erecting a structure. As I said, the inscription is not complete, but the fragments that have survived describe parts of that structure. It is around a rectangular square, whatever it is, we don't know. It has a toran, that means an arch, and it describes certain other features of that structure that he is erecting. But the most important part of that inscription that has survived, luckily for us, where is he erecting that inscription, that site? He says, I'm erecting this structure at the Maha sthan of Vasudev.
Oh, wow.
Now, I've deliberately not used the word Janmasthan because I'm going by the absolute verifiable epigraphic evidence. Now, because the rest of the inscription has not survived, we do not know what he meant by Mahasthan. But our simple understanding leads us to speculate that it can either be the birthplace or a very important event connected with the life of Vasudev Krishna. It can be the killing of Kans or whatever. But I don't want to speculate on what the rest of the inscription says. I will only say that it uses the word Mahasthan of Vasudev. So Vasudev Krishna is very much there, and the Mahasthan is also mentioned in that inscription. So this inscription, as you said, it's over 2000 years old. And people who say that we have a claim to the Katra Keshav Dev site going back a long time, they cite this inscription as the first proof, authentic proof of the Hindu claim to that site. Now, when I use the word Hindu, I would also like to clarify this is a short form. I'm not saying that this was a term in vogue at that time, but I'm using it for the sake of convenience. And what I mean is the Krishna devotees or Krishna bhakts. So this is the first evidence. Can I cite one or two more evidences, or you want to question me?
Yeah, this is just amazing, Dr. Meenakshi. The thing that blows my mind is that there is absolute certainty about the place and the the
Person.
recollection. The
Yes.
narrative has never changed. Nobody is calling Krishna by any other name. It is the same thing, and yet you have some curmudgeons who want to just keep on saying that, yeah, this is not true, that is not true, and so on and so forth. So please continue, and I may have some follow-up questions later, but at this point, this was the only observation I had.
Yes, I want to say that it is high time that we pay due respect to the Hindu civilizational memory. Modern historians do not take this into account at all. So, as I said, Krishna, according to the Hindu belief, was born at no other place than Mathura. And there is this inscription which talks about the Maha sthan of Krishna, Vasudev Krishna. Now, you know that Mathura was devastated and attacked. So, we don't know how much we have lost, but it is our good fortune that we have another inscription that was found in the British period. This inscription was found from a well, and because it was found in a well, it is known as the Mora well inscription. Mora was the name of the well. Now, you know, a well is no place for an inscription. Obviously, it flew there in the time of some attack or invasion or whatever. But this inscription is just a little later than the Vasu Door Jam inscription, almost the same time. But Vasu is the first and Mora well inscription is the second. And this well inscription, it is also no less significant. It says that we are building a stone structure. It specifies the material that is going to be used in the construction. It's a stone structure. And who is it being made for? The inscription is very clear that it is being made to honor the 5 Vrishni heroes. Now we know that Vasudev Krishna belonged to the Vrishni clan, and the people in that clan who were revered and honored were Vasudev Krishna, his brother, elder brother Sankarshan, then Anirudh, Pradyumna and Samba, all immediate relatives of Vasudev Krishna. So this is further authentication of the importance of Mathura for the Vrishni heroes, for the Bhagavad followers, and we come across these inscriptions. Now that is not the end of the story.
And the Moravel dating is?
Just about a decade or two after the Vasu Door Jan inscription.
I see.
But there's no particular exact date, but it is dated by archaeologists to about a few
Carbon
years
dating
after.
Kind of process.
Yeah, whatever, just a few years. But you know, I mean, it is really amazing. Alexander Cunnigham, he was the first Director General of the Archaeological Survey of India. And his contribution to preserving and discovering our heritage is something that we should always be grateful for. Now, Alexander Cunningham excavated a mound near where this inscription had been found. And in the course of that excavation, he discovered 3 statues. Now, there are 2 male torsos and 1 female. Now, the 2 male torsos are headless. So, but what is absolutely intriguing for us is that the leading art historians in India and abroad have examined these 2 male torsos, and their conclusion is unanimous. There is no dissent on this, and they say that one torso is without doubt that of Vasudev Krishna and the other of his brother.
Balram?
Yes. Balram, also known as Sankarshan.
Okay.
And the third inscription, the third torso is not of the same period as these 2 male torsos. It's slightly later. But the thing about that torso is that it has an inscription on the pedestal. Again, the torso is headless, but scholars say this is the sister of Vasudev Krishna and Balram, Ek Namsa. So, I mean, people who mock at the Hindu reverence for Mathura and the claim to that particular site, they are either ignorant of all these facts or they deliberately try to brush them away. But my deep reverence and awareness of the strength and depth of the Hindu civilizational memory has been really reinforced by this work. After the Morawell inscription, there are a couple of other inscriptions from that area which also talk about people who are Param Bhagwats, that means great devotees of Vasudev Krishna. Now you ask.
Um, uh, Dr. Meenakshi Jain, the question I was going to ask you was that under the mound, was there a temple structure? Was it like that had a Nagara architecture or something similar to that? What was it? How, I mean, what did the mound expose?
Only ruins and fragments, because we must remember that Mathura was devastated several times by invaders, beginning with Mahmud Ghaznavi. And the devastation that Mahmud Ghaznavi wreaked over there, it is recorded by his court historian Utbi. After that, we have a series of attacks on Mathura. So there is no question of any particular site or structure that old surviving intact. We just have the inscription which says that we are creating a stone structure for the 5 Vrishni heroes. But as I said, the epigraph is not complete.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead. Yeah. I'm trying to get something from a book by Padma Bhushan Dr. Nagaswamy. I have some information, but please continue your thought. Go ahead.
I have also consulted Professor Nagaswamy. He was an outstanding historian, intellectual, art expert, and whatever you want to call him. Now, what I want to do, he was really, I mean, he helped me so much in my work, I can't tell you. Flight of Deities, that book, I owe so much to him. Okay, now to cut the long story short, there was a historian about 50 years ago, and he was wanting to study when were plays on the life of Krishna staged in Mathura. So he wanted to know, because we are all aware of, familiar with Krishna Leela, Ram Leela, but he wanted to know what is the earliest evidence that we have of plays on the life of Krishna being staged at Mathura. And here also it is absolutely remarkable that he found a partially damaged inscription which talks about a family of actors. And when we say family of actors, we mean they were proficient in singing, dancing, and all the other qualifications necessary for an actor. And this inscription, which the scholar found, led him to conclude that plays on the life of Krishna had been staged in Mathura 2000 years ago. So this tradition of staging plays on the life of Krishna in Mathura, he says, is at least 2000 years old, on the basis of some inscriptions that he found there.
You know, I've been scrambling to try and locate a coin in the first century ADE from
it's in my book.
It's
in my book. It's in my book.
Oh, you've got it. Wonderful, wonderful. Yes. That completes the book. One very good reason why you should buy this book. But in this book, Dharma Yoga, in first century BCE, before Common Era, there were coins that were printed with Ram Lakshmana, with Saraswati, with Lakshmi, with Durga, with the swastika symbol. I mean, it is how far back these things go. In fact, Mohenjo-daro excavations, they have bricks with swastika in there, and then people continue to associate it with the wrong person and the wrong symbol, and it just blows my mind that people can keep on thinking they can say a lie over and over and that becomes the truth. So anyway, that's a topic for a different day. Dr. Meenakshi, in your book, do you also talk about what happened in the recent past? Meaning, you see, India started feeling the turbulence from Mahmud of Ghaznai's attack. Did he also attack Mathura like the way he did Somnath? We know about Somnath. Not much is talked about his attack on Mathura.
You see, we are very fortunate that all these invaders, they took pride in desecrating and vandalizing Hindu sacred sites. So they made sure that they were accompanied by their court historians who described in detail what they did to this land that we call Bharatvarsh. Now, Mahmud Ghaznavi also attacked Mathura in 1017 Common Era. And we have an eyewitness account by his court historian, Utbi. Now, Utbi says that when we came to Mathura, we were staggered and spellbound by the kind of temples that we saw there. He said the intricate carvings on the outer walls of the temples made us think that this could not be the handiwork of humans. It had to be some divine spirit, divine energy, or perhaps the divine himself or herself that had descended to create these magnificent structures. So the kind of temples that they saw there is a vivid description of those temples, the statues, the murtis, and which were the largest temples. Now, we all know that Mahmud Ghaznavi, just destroyed whatever he could at Mathura. It was a total devastation of the city. Now, since we are talking about the Hindu civilizational memory, that is the key that we should emphasize upon. So, there were no historians at that time. There was no media or social media or whatever. But the memory of the devastation of Mahmud Ghaznavi, it was there for ordinary people. It registered that this has happened. And it is so astonishing and so heartening to know that more than 100 years after Mahmud Ghaznavi's attack on Mathura, we again have a fragment of an inscription. And that fragment of an inscription is by a person called Jhajja. Now, we have not heard of this name before or after, and we don't even know who he was. But this Jhajja, he says, I've rebuilt the temple for Krishna. Can you imagine? For 100 years, people of Mathura and everywhere else also, I'm sure, kept the memory that there was a temple that was destroyed. And more than 100 years later, Jhajja records that I have reconstructed that temple. When I talk about reconstructing a temple, it is obvious that it was not of the same grandeur, because political power had probably slipped out of the hands of the people of the subcontinent. They were no longer that prosperous. It was an attempt to reclaim sacred space, according to me.
So at this point, it would be a good time to show some details about the book, because we are probably going into the second part of our discussion where we come up to the contemporary dates. So the book is available on Amazon and it is called Vasudev Krishna and Mathura. It was released about a year ago, January 2021, but now it has a lot of significance because we know that the court has admitted a case to go over the legality of who owns the place, as well as perhaps it's going to look at some land registry records. We'll come to all that in just 1 second. So Dr. Meenakshi, Ghaznavi, and then 11th century, we talked about Dhaja. So after that, what happened? Can you walk us through up in the next 1,000 years?
I have to walk you through that next 1,000 years, because when we come to the modern debate, which is what is what you have mentioned, it will make no sense until we take cognizance of the repeated attacks on Mathura and the repeated attempts to claim that land for Krishna. And one more thing I want to add before I go into that. People say that Ayodhya was a Jain site and a Muslim site, a Buddhist site, etc. Nobody is denying that. two Jain Tirthankars are supposed to have been born in Mathura. Buddhism also had a presence in Mathura. But we must always remember that the claim was to a particular site in Mathura, not to the whole of Mathura. So the other parts of Mathura were inhabited by Jain people, Jain stupas were built, Buddhists were there. But this Katra Keshav Dev, we have never found any Buddhist or Jain remains over here. So this is a ploy, to create divisions and dissensions within the community. That, you were also there, you're not there now. The Jains never claimed Katra Keshav Dev as theirs, nor did the Buddhists. We have other parts of Mathura where Hindus and Buddhists and Jains can be found even today. Now, to come back to the thing. After Mahmud Ghaznavi, again I'm repeating this strength of the civilizational memory, because that is the keynote of our discussion. And that is the principal thing that I've learned from research in this area. So after Jhajjar, the temple that Jhajjar built was also damaged or destroyed. We have Feroz Shah Sikander Lodhi. But the Hindus seem to have patched it up and continued worshipping there. Now, Sikander Lodhi was, his contribution over there. It's all recorded by Persian historians that what they did at that site. It's very interesting that in the time of Emperor Akbar, we had a Portuguese Jesuit father who came and stayed at Akbar's court also for a while. And he visited Mathura, and his account is available. It has been translated into English and it is available on the net. Anyone can look at it. He says that in Mathura, there is only one temple that is left standing. And he says all the other temples have been devastated. But he also says that these foolish people, they have picked up fragments of those destroyed temples and erected small structures and continue to worship those temples that were devastated. Pieces of those temples they pick up, whether it's a statue or a part of a temple, they've erected small little huts kind and continue to worship over there. So this is the backdrop. Now for our purposes, what is the most important thing that happens at the birthplace site or at Mathura? You see, Emperor Jahangir, when he was prince, he revolted against his father because he suspected that his father is not going to make him the successor and will make Jahangir's son the successor. So he revolted in Akbar's time and set up a rival court. And he had a grudge against Abul Fazal, whom he thought was poisoning Akbar against Jahangir. So at that time, there was this tiny kingdom of Orcha. Abul Fazal had gone to the Deccan for some work and he was coming back from the Deccan on the summons of Akbar. Jahangir comes to know, so he tells a prince of Orcha, Abul Fazal is going to pass through your territory, cut his head and give it to me, and I will make you king of Orcha when I become the Mughal emperor. So that prince does exactly that, sends the head, and Jahangir makes him king of Orcha when he becomes Emperor Jahangir. Now this is no hearsay, it is no distortion of facts, because Jahangir has meticulously recorded all this in his autobiography, Tuzuk-e-Jahangiri. So again, you don't have to accept, it's always good to cross-check. It's always good to cross-check what a person is saying. So luckily for us, many of those medieval accounts are now available freely on the net. The Tuzuk-e-Jahangiri, the autobiography of Emperor Jahangir, records that he ordered the execution of Abul Fazal and made this Prince of Orcha king. Now this Prince of Orcha, Bir Singh Bundela, he is very important for us, because the moment he became the ruler of Orcha, what does he do? He says, I have to build a Krishna temple. In Mathura, he is in Orcha, but he says, I have to build a grand Krishna temple at Mathura. So this temple that he built, he spent a fortune on it. And it was such a grand temple that we have two eyewitness accounts, Frenchmen who came to India. They traveled over India, they went to Mathura, saw this temple of Bir Singh Bundela and recorded it in their travels to India. Again, those are available. So this is not evidence that is being concocted today. It is evidence that is centuries old. Now, and they said the temple could be seen, so it was so large, it could be seen miles away. Now, this is the temple that Aurangzeb destroyed. So now we will come back to the attacks on Mathura as per your question. Please ask.
Yes, the question that I think you are answering is that people think it was Jahangir who built this temple. So there is a big disconnect in people's perception, because there are people who will praise, oh, but Jahangir is the person who built this Krishna temple in Mathura. We should be grateful that there is at least one Mughal emperor, who was such a good friend of Hindus. So I think that theory lays completely flattened. I'm glad that we are going down this memory lane and looking up all these things, because I get my ears filled with so much information because of all the guests that have come on my hangouts, Dr. Meenakshi, that sometimes I need to kind of keep my head straight. Wait a minute, isn't this the truth? Isn't this the truth? So I'm hoping that in your book, you are going to capture as many pictures from those eras so that people can just carry a book like I'm carrying this Dharma Yoga. Because this one, for me, is the Bible as far as swastika is concerned. I have proof. 150 BCE, there was a coin, published by a Bactrian king that shows swastika. Anyway, so this is just my reference book.
That Bactrian king that you mentioned, 6 coins, silver coins, have been found during excavations in the Afghanistan, Baltistan area.
Yes.
And those 6 coins, silver coins, they have Vasudev on one side and his brother on the other side.
That was the one that I was searching for.
yeah, it's there I have it in my book. But that is also
wonderful.
That is also 2000 years ago.
Yes,
and
yes.
Before I come to Mathura, I just want to make one more point. Yes. And that is, in the 2nd century BCE, there was a Greek ambassador to the court of an Indian king. And he went to Vidisha and erected a column which still stands there in honor of Vasudev Krishna. So it's not that the followers of Vasudev Krishna were confined to Mathura. By no means. We have an inscription, Nana Ghat inscription in the Western Ghats, which talks about Sankarshan and Krishna. So before the coming of the common era, that is more than 2000 years ago, we have coins of Krishna found in Afghanistan border area. We have an inscription in the Western Ghats. So Krishna worship was not just confined to Mathura. That is also an important point that we should keep in mind.
Absolutely. And let's walk our memory lane. So Aurangzeb destroyed it. Then what happened?
Now, that was not the end of the sorrows of Mathura. The last major attack on Mathura was in 1757 by the Afghan invader Ahmad Shah Abdali. And Ahmad Shah Abdali's attack has been graphically recorded by a camp follower who was an eyewitness to this. And this account in Persian by a camp follower was translated by an ICS officer more than 70-80 years ago. All right. Now, this camp follower says that Ahmad Shah Abdali attacked Mathura, Braj, Vrindavan, and he told his soldiers that as many kafir heads that you bring, I will give you 5 rupees per head. Now, 5 rupees per head in that period was a huge amount. And he gives a graphic description of each soldier coming with so many heads tied to the rope. In one village, there were 200 heads of children that were chopped off. So, this kind of graphic assault that Mathura witnessed, it is the misfortune of Mathura that it has seen so much bloodshed, and all because of its commitment to its deities. So that ends the Muslim attacks on Mathura. Now the tide turns in favor of the Krishna Bhakts and devotees in 1770. In 1770, the Marathas win the Battle of Govardhan, and Mathura, Vrindavan, Agra area comes under their control. Now, the first thing that they do when they get control of this area is to declare the Katra Keshav Dev as government land, that is Nazul land. Now, when the Marathas, and when they declare this as Nazul land, the record states that the Maulvis at the Idgah, they left that place and they said, now we will go and look for an alternative means of livelihood elsewhere. So they actually left that place. Now, in 1803, the British defeated the Marathas and they became the rulers of this area. They also continued the Maratha policy of declaring this as government land. Now, in 1815, they sell this entire Katra Keshav Dev. When I talk about Katra Keshav Dev, I have to specify it means 13.37 acres. That is the dispute today. This 13.37 acres was never partitioned among any family members. It remained one unit. So what happens is that in 1815, the British auction this Katra Keshav Dev, and it is purchased by a family of bankers, and that family is the family of Raja Patnimal. So Raja Patnimal purchases the 13.37 acres. He is registered as the owner in the British Revenue and Judicial Records. Now this is when the British courts come in. From 1815 till the time of independence, there are a series of cases that are filed in the Mathura court. The judges were mostly British judges, except on the eve of independence when we had 1 or 2 Indian judges. So these cases are filed by the Idgah Party. When they came back, we are not sure. But they file one case after another in the British courts saying that this is our land. And each British judge examines the case with great care, examines all the documents that are available and all the documents that are presented by the two parties. And each British judge says that all the evidence points to Raja Patnimal and his successors as the owners of 13.37 acres. And they tell the Idgah Party that you have not been able to produce any evidence. But the Idgah Party goes on filing case after case, and it also resorts to fudging documents. Now, for example, they present a case in the British court that why are you calling this place Katra Keshav Dev? It is Katra Idgah. So the British judges say that please produce some documents. They're not able to produce any documents. They forge bills. They forge bills. They forge documents. And when the British government was wanting to build a railway line, they needed some land from this family. And the compensation for that land was also given to Raja Patnimal's heirs. So there is never any doubt that it was 13.37. Now what happened was that Raja Patnimal's heirs, they had a small debt, not much, just 13,000 rupees. But they were not able to repay that debt. And because of this constant litigation, they were not in a position to actually build the temple. Because of their financial weakness, and they finally had to sell the land. So they told Jugal Kishor Birla that we don't want any money for this 13.3 acres. You just repay that 13,000 rupee loan, because we are not in a position to build a temple. It's very clear. So they sold the land to Jugal Kishor Birla, and in 1951, Jugal Kishor Birla created Shri Janmabhoomi Trust, Shri Janmabhoomi Trust, and he created 3 people were members of that trust. It was headed by the great Madan Mohan Malaviya. According to Jugal Kishor Birla, the trust had to have only one objective, and that was to build a grand temple for Krishna, Lord Krishna. So till here, I have done my independent research. All the documents are with me. I can substantiate every point that I have made till here. After this, what I'm going to say is on the basis of a case that has been filed in Mathura, which is what you alluded to. Now, what is this case? Briefly put, in 1968, a body called the Shri Krishna Janmasthan Seva Sangh. The other thing was not Seva Sangh. In 1968, this body, Seva Sangh, enters into an agreement with the Idgah Party and gives 3 acres of land of Katra Keshav Dev to the Idgah Party. Now, what was the compulsion to give the land to the Idgah Party when the Idgah Party had lost each and every case in the British courts? When the Idgah Party had not been able to produce any evidence that it owned even a fraction of that land. Now, what I'm saying is that this is not something that I have researched. This is on the basis of the case that has been filed. Now, what is interesting about this case is why was this agreement done in 1968? According to some people, the government at the center had become a minority government, and it needed the support of some outside parties. And the 2 parties that it solicited support from were the Muslim League and the Communist Party. So this is I'm not saying this because I've not done research on this. This is on the basis of the case that has been filed. The office bearers of the Seva Sangh, their names are also given in that petition that Vishnu Jain and others have filed in the Mathura court. Among the people in that Seva Sangh is D.P. Mishra, who was Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh, Congress Chief Minister, and among the others that I can recall is the Congress Governor of Bihar. So now in 1960, and this agreement, you will be shocked to know, it marks the land that we will give this much from this much from this, so many yards from here, so many. So the agreement is not of falsehood at all, because the terms of that agreement are mentioned in the petition filed by Vishnu Jain, and that agreement has also come to public light recently. All the terms are there on the net. So the exact amount of land that is surrendered to Idgah Party is specified in that agreement. Now, the questions that arise for us: the present Idgah, is it built on that 3 acres of land given by the Seva Sangh?
Is it 3 acres, did you say, or 13 acres?
13.37 acres is the original Katra Keshav Dev.
Okay, okay.
Of that, the Seva Sangh gave 3 acres to the
3 acres.
Idgah
Got
Party.
it.
Of that, now the question is, so is this Idgah built on those 3 acres which were Katra Keshav Dev land, which have been declared by every court as Katra Keshav Dev? So if the masjid is built on the 3 acres surrendered by Seva Sangh, then the People's Worship Act does not apply to it. Second point, very important point. Alexander Cunnigham, he visited Mathura many times, and he has written detailed reports which are published in the ASI journals, and I've quoted them in my book. The last report of Alexander Cunnigham is very important. He says, the plinth of the temple that was destroyed is there for me to see. I can see it. It was one of the largest temples in India. And he said that the inscriptions of that temple have been used as pavements in the Idgah. And one of the inscriptions, I see the word Keshav, Kesoro, Keshav Rai. That means, Keshav. And he says that the Idgah is now in a dilapidated structure, and excavations under it can easily be done. So if Alexander Cunningham is saying that the Idgah is in a dilapidated structure that's going to fall apart any day, the present Idgah is not in a dilapidated structure at all. So these are questions for which we hope now that the Supreme Court has taken a clear stand. We hope that the Mathura court will shed light on this. What was the compulsion to have an agreement in 1968? When was the present Idgah built? And what is the way out? So this is basically what I have put together in my book.
Dr. Meenakshi Jain, this was a wonderful journey down memory lane about the temple for Sri Krishna built at his Janmasthan. And I'm hoping that this will form a series of discussions and hangouts that we will have as this case starts progressing forward, so that at any given point of time, if there is a question asked in the court, we can come back and refer to our references and say, okay, this is what it is, because we are not going to let go of these things anymore. And unless Hindus fight back, this is the whole Sanatana Dharma is under threat. And I'm hoping that we will have you back again very short time. And thank you so much for spending time to explain to us in a very simple to understand, lucid way how things came about. I would like to have another hangout with you, follow up, maybe after I go through your book and get a little bit better idea of how to ask more nuanced questions. Thank you very much, Dr. Meenakshi Jain. And
thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you.